Let's get to the latest from the southern border as the United States sees its biggest surge of migrants in decades, according to data obtained by NBC News from Customs and Border Protection. As of yesterday morning, nearly 5,000 unaccompanied migrant children are in custody. And of those, over 800 have been in detention for over 10 days. That is significantly longer than the 72 hours a child is legally intended to be held. Based on the report, all facilities except for one in Big Bend, Texas, are over capacity. In total, nearly 10,000 immigrants of all ages are in Border Patrol facilities built for about 3,200 people. A Health and Human Services official tells NBC News that as of Sunday evening, there were 10,800 unaccompanied migrant children in HHS care. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas appeared on 5 different networks yesterday to defend the president's immigration strategy, arguing that the southern U.S. border is closed.
Our message has been straightforward and simple, and it's true. The border is closed. We are expelling families. We are expelling single adults, and we've made a decision that we will not expel young, vulnerable children. I think we are executing on our plans, and quite frankly, when we are finished doing so, the American public will look back on this and say we secured our border and we upheld our values and our principles as a nation. Please remember something, that President Trump dismantled the orderly, humane, and efficient way of allowing children to make their claims under United States law in their home countries. He dismantled the Central American Minors Program. So we are rebuilding those orderly and safe processes as quickly as possible. But in the meantime, we will not expel into the Mexican desert, for example, 3 orphan children whom I saw over the last 2 weeks. We just won't do that. That's not who we are.
So, Jonathan Lemire, obviously the Biden White House is running into a crisis, and that humanitarian crisis is growing. You don't have to put children in cages to have a humanitarian crisis growing at the southern border. Are there some regrets, at least off the record, that they completely got rid of all of Donald Trump's and the Trump administration's immigration policies? Like, for instance, where if you're going to make an asylum claim, you need to make an asylum claim either in Mexico or the country where you're coming from.
Well, Joe, there's certainly a recognition in the Biden White House that this is a growing problem for them. Humanitarian crisis, certainly, but also a political dilemma. And obviously, they blame a lot of this on the Trump administration. We heard the secretary say that repeatedly yesterday. But there is a sense that they were caught a little bit flat-footed here, that they weren't really ready for the surge of migrants that would come, timed to a new president taking office. I asked President Biden yesterday on the South Lawn when he came back from Camp David what had to be done here. He said himself that he'd be traveling to the border before too long, and he acknowledged that their messaging needed to be better. They needed to drive home the idea that these migrants did indeed need to go through the proper channels, restore the system where they could make the claims from their home countries. Because right now, with the border dominating headlines, it's overwhelming what the White House wants to talk about, which is the COVID-19 relief bill.
Well, but Jonathan, again, they're trying to blame the Trump administration, but a lot of outside observers are saying that actually the mistake they made was their language was too inviting, first of all, and secondly, too encouraging of people, and secondly, they did throw out a lot of guidelines that the Trump administration had that would have prevented this crisis from happening.
Right. And I think, Joe, the off-the-record regrets come about the messaging, that in those first few days when President Biden overturned some of the former president's immigration strategies, that it seemed to be sending too clear of a signal that, hey, it was interpreted by migrants, even though, of course, President Biden didn't say this, but it was interpreted as a welcome sign, like now's the time to come. And for weeks, as the White House was focused on other things, we saw these surges grow and grow at the border. Now, certainly, the language has shifted here from the White House, and they're being very clear. Now's not the time. Stay home. give us an opportunity to fix the system, then we'll process you. But it's a little bit late for that. That is a concern. And those in the White House do feel that that's a problem, which is why we're seeing such a scramble now to try to get a hold of this before it gets further out of hand.
So let's bring in White House bureau chief for the Washington Post and MSNBC senior political analyst Ashley Parker and immigration correspondent for Politico, Sabrina Rodriguez. And Ashley, I want to start with you. You've got a sweeping piece. You're the lead reporter in the Post, looking at this situation, the lead line, no end in sight. What are the possibilities for an end in sight? What's the Biden administration trying to do to contain this problem?
Well, that's exactly what the Biden administration is scrambling to figure out right now. They came in very deliberately wanting to set the message that they were going to offer a more humane and more welcoming immigration policy than former President Trump. The mere fact of Biden did that. The challenge is that while they were doing these things, rolling back some of Trump's executive orders, Biden did 5 of those on the first day alone, sending a slightly more welcoming messaging. They made a very critical decision to accept unaccompanied minors which is something Trump had been expelling them back to Mexico. They did not have the systems in place to sort of handle the capacity for what that would mean for this new immigration system. So their immediate goal now is scrambling to get the resources and the capacity at the southern border. And when it comes to those children specifically, their 2 top goals, they told me, are to immediately get them out of Customs and Border Patrol custody as quickly as possible and place them with a safe and vetted family member at the southern border. They think if they can do that, that will buy them a little time to get the immigration system in place that they want and they need.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.